Pessoal, vou fazer a introdução do Jacques em português. Bom, acho que todos aqui, muita gente da pós-graduação, devem conhecer o Jacques. O Jacques vem para o Brasil quase todo ano, então, felizmente, a gente conseguiu trazê-lo novamente esse ano. Um prazer imenso tê-lo aqui. O Jacques é um professor emérito da Universidade Libre de Bruxelas, um dos pais da bioquímica do exercício, então é um prazer muito grande trazê-lo para falar para vocês. É um patrono também do IBEC, né, que é o evento internacional que trata de bioquímica do exercício, e hoje a gente também tem o privilégio de ter na plateia, além de vocês, né, o professor Roger Harris, que é um dos... Se o Jacques é o pai da bioquímica do exercício, né, como o Roger não vai entender a piada, dá para dizer que ele é a mãe da bioquímica do exercício. Então é um prazer tê-los aqui, espero que vocês desfrutem da apresentação e depois no final a gente abre para questões. Jacques, please. Thank you very much for coming. Enjoy yourself.
Bom dia. That's almost the only word that I know. A little bit more by the end of the presentation. So let's start with the title, Nutrient Supplementation in Sport. Do we really have to take some of them? Is it necessary? Is it totally stupid? This is what I'm going to try, and I know that probably sometimes Roger is going to jump. But that's not a problem for me. So let's talk first about the legal aids. It has to be a definition. What is illegal? Well, something that you are not allowed to take and to buy. Commercial allegation, as you will see, there are many commercial allegations. If you do not use that when you are doing some sport practice, you will be dead by the end of the week. Scientific evidence, how could we prove that yes, it works, or no, I'm not totally convinced, or it doesn't work? Realities in sports events. Do we have to do that? For example, in ultra-marathon race, what should we do? Something or nothing? And of course, might be any deleterious effect by all these supplementation. Some might be maybe good, but some might be a little bit tricky for your health. So let's go on. I think that one has to be totally convinced that when you say, I'm very well preserved by what I eat, yes, but what do you eat? It has to be a full week, 7 days, all details about food intake, breakfast, dinner, supper, light meals, how much you have to weight it. Is it cooked or uncooked? What's the quality of what you have been eating? Therefore, you need to know many information about what you eat. Therefore, do I have to some kind of exercise? Yes, how much per day? And if you want to be exactly knowing what will be the incidence about your health, you have to take 24-hour urine collection, not just a sip of urine collection. No, 24 hours, twice a week. One during the weekend, another one out of the weekend, because you eat differently on weekends as compared to days. Of course, you have to have a personal interview with someone who knows what about dietitian means. You have to use a computerized balance where all the information is already, let's say, on the web, for example, and you have to give some nutritional conclusions. Is it an excess? Is it a shortage? Is it a total imbalance? Therefore, before doing any kind of supplementation, please, what are you going to eat every single day during 1 week? It has to be known about that. Let us talk about nitrogen balance. When you do exercise, you are totally convinced that you have to eat a lot of protein. Yes, but don't forget, we have to take care of what we call nitrogen balance. Of course, nitrogen coming from, let's say, urea or ammonia, you're not going to use that. You are going to spend by your bladder, you're going to spend that to the animal in the open sea. They're going to eat it, but not you. Therefore, we know from many years that, in fact, anyone doing nothing, no exercise, he has to pick up about let's say 0.8 gram of protein dry weight per 24 hours. And then most of the people are on the good side. In other words, they don't have a negative balance. If you say negative balance, it means that you are going to utilize too much of those proteins. It has to be counterbalanced. Therefore, 0.8 would be sufficient. Yes, but if I do exercise, well, we have done that before. Orienteering, practicing, bodybuilding, it's no more 0.8, it's about 1.2, 1.3. And most of the people are, let's say, in a positive nitrogen balance. Does it mean that I have to go up to 3 grams per day? No, that's totally stupid. Therefore, you have to have about 50% more of amino acid intake per kilo body weight per 24 hours. If you do, of course, regular exercise. What might be the ergogenic supplements? There are a lot of them. We are only going to give some information about carnitine, beta-alanine. He will be totally pleased. Creatine as well. Glutamine, ginseng. Why ginseng? You will see why. And nitrate. So let us start. Carnitine, biochemical evidence. It's of course a novel substance synthesized by cells, needed for free fatty acid transport, at least for those who are more than 10 carbon in their formula, and that should be included into the mitochondria. Therefore, that's one thing which could enhance mitochondrial oxidation. Why mitochondrial oxidation? Do you know why? In mitochondria? Why is it interesting for the athletes? Because by the end of mitochondrial oxidation, what are you going to produce for exercise? ATP, of course. Let's go back. But to get carnitine, we can't do that ourselves by using one single amino acid lysine. By many steps, we are going to synthesize carnitine in your cells. And of course, in order to bring the fatty acid into the mitochondria, into the, let's say, the muscle cells, you have to use a link between the carnitine with free fatty acid over there. And as soon as you do that, by, of course, enzymes, one more question. Do we have, because in our body we have about more or less 2,000 different enzymes. So, everywhere, as soon as you go from a substance A to a reaction B, you need an enzyme. Obligation. One exception. Which one? Where's the exception? By transformation of creatine to creatinine in muscle. You do not need an enzyme. Yes, but I'm doing that as soon as I do exercise, of course. How are we going to explain the transfer of these free amino acids? Of course, we have free amino acid out of the cell in blood. It has to get into the muscle. Of course, the free amino acids are here, but they can also be released by triglycerides stored in the cell. And of course, I'm not going to go straight to all these metabolisms, but after that, these are free fatty acids, therefore non-esterified fatty acid, are going to go to many translations in order to get up to acyl-CoA. And from there, when the carnitine is coming there, and we are going to use that in order to get that, let's say, fatty acid into the mitochondria, and it has to go through the membrane of the mitochondria over here in order to get good pieces of energy from the Krebs cycle. All right, let us go further. But to do that, even if we take creatine in our, let's say, supplementation, it has to be linked to the free fatty acid. All right, you need a special enzyme to do that. And then the two are moving through a typical transport, again, special transport, into the mitochondria. and the situation will be reversed by a second carnitine acetyltransferase, one outside of the mitochondria, one inside the mitochondria. Therefore, ready to go into the energy production. Great. But does it work? Creatine supplementation, of course, it might be 2 grams per day for 4 weeks, etc., etc. Here are the positive results. They are all going, wait, it's funny. There should be, let's say, arrow going up here, arrow going down here, and going up here. I don't know why it has no transmitter from my computer to that computer. Mystery. But you may observe that in fact, with many differences, those are positive results. But then you go for other, let's say, production of interest, and you see those are all negative results. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Should we have to eat that? It's a must for every person involved in exercise. I have my response. What's your response? Going further, carnitine supplementation 3 grams per day during 1 week, and at a, let's say, reasonable intensity of exercise. Only, let's say, about 50% of the VO2 max. And here is the lipid oxidation when you take muscles in order to compare resting condition, and control versus carnitine supplementation. And then you realize that for, let's say, an exercise of only submaximal, when you are almost certain that the benefit will come 50% more or less from glycogen and 50% from the free fatty acid supplementation, when you realize that in fact there is no statistical difference between control and carnitine supplementation. So, why should we be using this kind of supplementation? Let us go further. 2 days of carnitine during 4 weeks, only endurance athletes. And they took muscle samples and they compare, of course, before supplementation and after supplementation. With the carnitine powderine transferase, the enzyme outside of the mitochondria and the enzyme inside mitochondria are going to lead the free fatty acids through the mitochondria, but the membrane. There is no modification at all. You take not, or you take. So why should we continue to utilize that? Of course, you may also say, yes, but I'm still going to utilize carnitine supplementation. But why is the reason about that it doesn't work? How could we explain that it doesn't work? Carnitine concentration in human plasma is about 50 micromolar. If you look into skeletal muscle, it's not 50 micromolar, it's 4,000 micromolar. In other words, you have more carnitine inside as the quantity that you are able to pick up in the plasma. And of course, there is here the carnitine transferase and the Kn, in fact, the 50% of function will be totally saturized at about 4 micromolar. Therefore, you cannot take as much as you want to into the cell, and that's why the enzyme which is inside the mitochondria, well, that's about 400 to 700 micromolar. In other words, that enzyme, the type 1 and the type 2, are totally saturated with the quantity of carnitine that we already have in our muscle system. Why should I take more therefore? Is it worse or not? Conclusion, there is no specific evidence that carnitine supplementation enhances lipid mobilization and oxidation in skeletal muscle. The lipid-limiting enzyme are the carnitine acetyltransferase and the 2-oxobutyrate dehydrogenase. And these two you can enhance by just making regular exercise. Let's say endurance exercise. Therefore, endurance training is going to enhance the number of these two limiting enzyme molecules, not the quantity that you are going, let's say, to swallow every single day. What about alanine? It's going to stop like this. Beta-alanine and histidine. Roger has made a lot of work about beta-alanine supplementation and its influence on cancer. Of course, beta-alanine, not alpha-alanine, beta-alanine is going to be linked to histidine in order to make cancer. Carnosine is acting in muscle proton uptake. I'm not going to go to give all the details. But the quantity of carnitine in muscle is very low as compared to sea mammals. Because sea mammals are able to go down by about 1 kilometer under the knee and to stay there for 20, 30 minutes and then coming up. Try to do that. You then, much before reaching, let's say, 100-meter dive. Therefore, the concentration is proportional to the hydrogen buffering system. Scientific observation in humans. Some publications demonstrate its importance as a proton buffer system. That's for certain, but is it important to swallow or to eat beta-alanine in order to increase the quantity of carnitine? Well, let's see if that works. For certain, according to Roger, and he demonstrated that quite easily many years ago, 4 weeks of creatine of beta-alanine supplementation, 3.2 gram or 5.2 gram, further, no difference, but you are able to increase the quantity of a little bit of these carnitine increase as compared to zero supplementation. That's for certain. That works. But am I certain that if I add more of beta-alanine to get more concentration of carnosine, is it going to help the athletes with beneficial, let's say, results? Well, supplementation, and here you realize that in fact you have negative results and then you have a lot of positive results. Which means that for some people that works, for other people it doesn't work. Why does it work for some people, why it doesn't work for other people? I don't know. But you shouldn't say, I'm going to take that and it's going to work in any type of condition. One example. One of our good friends in Belgium published that about 7 years ago, and he looked to the speed of, let's say, making a 6-kilometer run and measuring the number of meters per second. Of course, if you are increasing the speed, you should be better and better. Yes, but is there any link with the muscle carnosine concentration that they measured? Well, of course, they said, my R statistical is 0.7. In other words, the real one is R squared. And R squared means about, let's say, more or less 0.5, which means that about 50% benefit when you look to the concentration of carnosine and, of course, the speed of running for those people. Yes, but you realize that for the same concentration, the same speed, some has a low concentration and other has a high concentration. So, yes, it may be working with some people, but it doesn't work as a 100% benefit. That's the reason that I'm not totally convinced that we should, tomorrow morning, to start your breakfast first with carnitine or beta-alanine supplementation. Otherwise, you may be dying in the afternoon. Conclusion, 4 weeks, increase muscle carnitine, that for certain, it has been shown by Roger. Muscle carnitine enhanced proton buffer capacity, that's correct. Few preliminary experiments showed the power, of course, there is an increase for some, for short-term supramaximal exercise. Still some doubt for some subject, why it works for some subject and it doesn't work for other subject, I don't know. But, as shown by Roger, an excess of beta-alanine might, over 3 grams per day, might lead to some allergic skin reaction everywhere. It's a little bit disappointing, at least mentally, for the athlete. What about now the other one, creatine? Well, creatine as you know, it's made up starting in the kidney, it goes to then to be a little bit transformed into creatine in the liver, and then from the liver it goes straight to the muscle system in order to get ATP formation afterwards. Alright? But a man of 70 kilos, he has about 120 grams of creatine in the whole body. 95% in skeletal muscle, 5% in heart, brain, testicles, 60% as phosphorylcreatine, of course. Main role, synthesis of ATP. That's typical. Perfect. Turnover rate, more or less 2 grams per day. Therefore, you should at least have 2 grams per day of creatine in order to be stable about, let's say, the use of that substrate. Right? Poortmans, October, a month ago, 853 publications just for creatine, saying that it improved performance, it delayed fatigue threshold, faster recovery, increase of muscle mass, higher muscle protein synthesis. So, don't forget, as soon as you leave this room, you have to sprint straight to 5 grams of creatine. True or not? Let me have some doubt. Another study was experimental effect of creatine in the field condition. Positive results, negative results. Sprint, endurance, bicycle, swimming, rowing, etc., etc., etc. It depends. Of course, there might be much more information in field condition, but I took a little bit that I was able to find quite, let's say, reasonable. So you may realize that the no effect seems to be higher as compared to the positive effect. Yes, again, your food system is involved. Creatine supplementation and age, alright, kids, adult, elderly people, tissue, well, in the brain, in muscle, everywhere. You could, of course, use it as an omnivorous, you eat everything, or vegetarians. Vegan might be a little bit more tricky, because they don't want to eat anything coming from an animal. So they have to be more surveyed by a real dietitian. Yes, but does that work? Creatine supplementation and age, for example, comparing children, adult, and then the elderly. And they are giving supplementation such as more or less 10, 25 grams per day instead of the 2 that you are producing yourself. And they look to muscle ratio between phosphorylcreatine and ATP. You do remember that phosphorylcreatine is one way to get ATP formation. So, is it going to be higher? Well, apparently it's going to be higher if you look to children. No supplementation. It doesn't work so much for adults. It seems to be working a little bit more for the elderly people. Why for the elderly people? I don't know, but probably that their food intake per day might be also involved as compared to other people. But when you look to the brain, phosphorylcreatine ATP ratio, well, being a child or being an elderly person, let's say I hate the elderly people. I prefer to be called myself a senior. That's much more interesting, I guess so. But then we made some let's say, work with Michael Rennie, for example, you know pretty well, looking to, let's say, the evidence of during 5 days of creatine. It was 21 grams per day during 5 days. And we looked to humans in the hospital, and particularly in the laboratory of the hospital, with an MD facing us, just in case of, because we are going to take muscle biopsies, we are going to put a catheter in the vein, but also a catheter in artery. As you will see, it was a little bit tricky. And we look to the synthesis of protein, looking to, let's say, C13, leucine, and phenylalanine. That's one way to see if creatine is going to increase the production of new protein molecules. And of course, we use femoral venous blood samples, arterial blood samples, before, after supplementation. We measure the blood flow, took biopsies of the muscle, therefore they were quite invasive, I have to say. Yes, that's true. That was invasive. That's the whole situation. They have, let's say, either biopsy or, let's say, taking blood samples almost everywhere. And they were only working with one leg. The other leg was resting in order to compare if there was a difference between acting legs, physical acting leg, and resting legs. And of course, we had the pleasure to have our good friend, Eric Poortmans, that he knew pretty well. Unfortunately, he died about 4 to 5 years ago. And he was taking muscle biopsies. You see, he doesn't seem to be suffering. You know, there were previously anesthetic injection, right? Then they were doing heavy exercise during 20 minutes. They were totally exhausted, but still happy. And of course, we took blood samples from the working muscle and from the resting muscle as well, in order to be able to compare the whole stuff. All right? What were the results? Resting condition and post-exercise. Looking to myofibrils, quantity of muscle protein synthesis, and looking to sarcoplasmic protein synthesis. Well, resting and after exercise. There were even a small drop in the myofibril, and there was nothing in the sarcoplasm. Therefore, I wouldn't say that you have to take, let's say, this kind of creatine because you are going to enhance everything in the muscle. No, it doesn't seem to be working as we were supposed. But what about protein muscle breakdown? Does it act? Is it going to reduce the breakdown? Resting condition, no creatine, 5 days of creatine. No difference at all. So I'm not totally convinced that because you are doing exercise, it is absolutely compulsory that you have to eat a lot quantity of creatine to be able to do your exercise every single day. But what about creatine supplementation and renal dysfunction? In about 20 years, in the Lancet, that's a good production for science. They said, be careful because 3 American college wrestlers died because they have taken oral creatine. I think that they have been taken as something else than just creatine because they were bodybuilders. And here, a 24-year man with some kind of glomerulonephritis, in fact, where after 8 years taking creatine, he died as well. Yet, how could we compare that? We couldn't compare, of course. Therefore, another good presentation, 2006. Could you imagine it? United States Doping Agency. So, these are important persons. And they said, be careful, supplementation of creatine has not yet been established. Well, seems to be true. But they said, be careful, you might have greater incidence of dehydration, nausea, stomach cramps, diarrhea, muscle cramping, etc., etc., etc. Is that correct? They said so. Right? What else? Conclusion of the European Union on creatine. They are slightly more, let's say, take it smooth and not dramatic. But they said you have to be careful because you have to know the source of creatine that you buy in a shop. Why? It has to be a pure product. But if you go to the net, you can have something which has been produced in China or anywhere else, and they have a lot of derivatives made during the synthesis of creatine. Therefore, you have to be careful. And we decided to have a look together with our good friends. Creatine and renal function in humans, about 400 publications, nothing happened. So it seems to be totally untrue. Yes, but even more, glomerular filtration rate. You shouldn't take, let's say, a piece of urine and then say, in that piece of urine, I found a major difference. Yes, but how many milliliters of urine per minute? No, it's only per ml. That's a nonsense. It has to be an output. In other words, unit per minute of excretion through the kidney. And we did that with creatine, looking to creatine in clearance, in fact, the end product of creatine. And then we realized that for 5 days, 14 days, 9 weeks, 5 years, we couldn't find any difference at all between control and those who are taking 21 grams of creatine per day. So it's not, let's say, dangerous for the kidney, for certain. Other one, we look to albumin excretion rate. That's one way to see if the kidney is going to be in trouble. If the excretion is enhanced, you might have a big problem on your kidney side and you have probably to stop it. Control, upper limit of a normal albumin excretion rate in human normal limit. Okay, 1 year, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years. And we made that with our good friend from South Korea, Chan Kim. He was really happy to do that with us. But, as I said, you might have side products, as they said, in one of the previous of the Europe of creatine. And they said, be careful, because not necessarily creatine, but also creatinine, they can induce methylamine, they can induce formaldehyde. These are two bad byproducts, at least in high concentration. What's going to happen in our situation if, of course, we use supplementation, 21 grams per day, 2 weeks, and we took urine collection. As you may observe, methylamine is here, formaldehyde is here, but it's expressed as unit per 24 hours. They had to collect the urine for 24 hours. And we realized that, in fact, there was an increase for methylamine, there was a less increase in formaldehyde. So yes, therefore that might be extremely dangerous. It looked dangerous, but it isn't dangerous. Why? Because the upper limit is not here, it's about over there. Over there. So you don't have to suffer about a slight increase. Look to the heteroamine synthesis. Indeed, if you take creatine or creatinine plus glucose plus free amino acid, there is a lot of different, let's say, substrate, but you finally reach what we call heterocyclic amines. And those amines, if they are produced in larger excess, they might be, let's say, a negative effect on the health scale of the subject, of a human subject. Yes, but is it so? Together with Bruno and his team, they decided here, in Sao Paulo, they decided to look at these 3 heterocyclic amines. Acute effect or chronic effect. Male, female, and there is no evidence at all of these tremendous increase of the heterocyclic amines. It's a hypothesis, but the hypothesis is not giving, let's say, correct results. No, we don't have to suffer if we take an excess of creatine. But is it appropriate to extend conclusions from animal studies to human subjects? Yes, but we saw that on the right. We saw that on the other animals. Well, but what about humans? A good paper by my good friend Martin Opolsky from Canada. He said, all right, we are going to look for supplementation of creatine monohydrate for a long term in mice and in rats. And they realized that, in fact, if they look for, let's say, bad influence, major inflammation on these mice and rats because they have been eating counter their illness, of course. We didn't ask permission to the animals. And then they realized that in fact the observed inflammatory change is the marine level must be considered as evaluation of hepatic metabolism. But mice. But on the other animal it doesn't work. So we have to be careful when we jump from animal studies to another animal studies and from animal studies to our protein studies as a human being. Branch chain amino acid, alright, we have leucine, isoleucine, and valine. That's what we call branch chain amino acid. It's mainly in their muscle tissue. Are they important for endurance exercise? Well, they might decrease during prolonged exercise. And the hypothesis was, if we give supplementation of the branch chain amino acid, is it going to delay the fatigue system? Should we take it in order to be able to walk or to run at a faster speed and for a longer distance? Well, divergent conclusion in humans and rats. Seems to be dangerous for a rat. It is not dangerous for another piece of mammal. But what's going to happen if we give the branch chain amino acid? Well, they enter into the muscle here. Then they reach the metabolism of glucose. No more detail. But finally, because of the release of free amino acid in a muscle, it's going to react with the, let's say, the glutamate in order to make glutamine. But glutamine, released by the muscle, mainly by the muscle, is in fact mainly used in lymphocyte, renal cells, and enterocyte. So some people said, well, maybe that for exercise it would be interesting to get some glutamine supplementation. Well, does it work? Observation, muscle contains a huge amount of glutamine, that was compulsory as nutrient for lymphocyte, as I saw. Important in immune deficiency, therefore it might be helping you in immune deficiency, particularly if you do intense exercise. And of course the hypothesis is giving glutamine supplementation going to reduce the immunodeficiency in heavy trained athletes. We looked to that with people on a marathon race, and we didn't decide to give, let's say, 100 grams of glutamine. That's in all the food shop, in everywhere, even in Sao Paulo, in Belgium. No problem. Huge amount. Is it going to work? Well, rowing, running, marathon race, ultramarathon, studies, a few studies, and of course those studies showed quite easily, with one exception, it's not a long way, 2% were having respiratory infection. Therefore, yes, it might be probably be beneficial to have some supplementation. Yes, but 5 grams per day during 1 week post-exercise. When we look to strenuous exercise such as a marathon race, 50% reduction of infection incidence. It seems to be interesting to have this kind of glutamine post-exercise in order to reduce the kind of, let's say, bad situation released during the exercise. However, no relationship between plasma glutamine, which remains almost stable, and immunodeficient syndrome. So, are we able to address total conclusion? Still doubt about it. Ginseng supplementation. So, why are you talking about ginseng? Well, ginseng is mainly used in China and South Korea. The hypothesis, because it's made from plant, the hypothesis is the activation of hypothalamic, let's say, axis in order to stimulate your brain. So, as an athlete, for a long period of exercise, should I take ginseng? Last March, this year, I was invited to South Korea by my colleagues. And they said, we are going to offer you something. Ginseng, alright? That's ginseng. You may observe that in fact, the situation is a little bit tricky. If I should ask you, would you please draw the reaction as a question of result. No, never, of course. But is it working? And they gave me a charming box of tea from ginseng. Yes, but does it work? So I went to the web and I only found a slight, let's say, possibility. What is a possibility? Even 2017, we don't know. No, we don't know. No, 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 no. Then here, 15, 16, 17, less information. What does that mean, less information? Well, better speed going down. Why not up? Eccentric exercise? Maybe. And antioxidant power? Maybe. So, if you are convinced that it works, well, maybe it's going to help your brain, to make you happier, but that's all. The last one would be, aha, what's that? Right? Beetroot. They say beetroot should be important. Why? Because beetroot is in fact nitrate, but there is a question already from probably not Shakespeare, but he said nitrate or no nitrate, this is the question. Shakespeare. Right? Then I looked and I said, what's in 100 grams of beetroot? Nitrate, almost 100 grams of nitrate. That's a lot. In 100 grams of beetroot. So that might be helping, probably. Alright? How does it work? Here, the source, dietary source of beetroot. Of course, you have nitrate. Then in your saliva, the cells of the saliva glands are going to reduce that to nitrate. From there, there's a lot of things we are going to get sodium monoxide. And over here, again, to the one. Therefore, it's a cycle. Alright? A little bit complicated. But are we going to use that? And all beneficial, they say. Alright? Blood circulation, vessel dilatation. That's great for doing exercise. Inhibition of plaquettes segregation. Great. I won't have clots in my vessels. Kidney enhanced glomerular filtration rate and permeability. That would be nice because during severe exercise, the quantity of blood going from the kidney will be reduced, of course, for the benefit of muscle. Right? Let's go further. Birth condition. I don't have personal information about myself because it's inhibition of uterus contraction. But maybe that my wife knew about it. I don't know. But I never gave the nitrate to her anyway. Am I still in good condition? Nervous central system, neurotransmitters. It might be increasing the memory and learning possibility. Those are all information in the website. Alright? But there is another one which might be interesting for some people. You never know. Relaxation of penis vessel. Viagra action. So, well, maybe. I didn't test it myself. Nitrate supplementation and exercise performance. Too much of a good thing? Well, we produce with Bruno a good review, and you may observe that you have either arginine supplementation, beetroot juice, or nitrates, and you may observe that in fact you may have positive results and you may have negative results. So why should you use this kind of nitrate? It might be working in the certain condition for the same type of exercise. Well, individual specialties, I don't know. So I'm not convinced that we have to do that. But why not Belgian chocolate? Because you know that Belgian chocolate is the best in the world. Small country, but a huge amount of producing Belgian chocolates. Why is it, might be a link? Well, the link is important because it's a scientific link. And that's serious information. Quantity of Nobel Prize out of 10 million inhabitants for different countries and look into the quantity of chocolate absorption kilo per year per person. So you may imagine that in fact, those people, due to the very low number of population, well, those who have the highest number of laureates of Nobel Prize per 10 million, these are Switzerland people, and of course Sweden, Denmark, Austria, Norway, even Britain's shield, they beat us. Because when you look to the United States, well, all right, okay, maybe, but we are about the same. Belgium is here, and France is there. So we are quite lucky because we realize that in fact we have about the same number per 10 million inhabitants of Nobel Prize winners, but we beat the French people because we don't have to eat too much. They have to use too much of chocolate. So you may see that just to have a little bit of entertaining situation, that in fact, yes, conclusion on a nutritional supplementation sport event, often commercial products have no or slight effect on performance, fatigue, recovery. A well-trained program is compulsory. Avoid, of course, overtraining, because overtraining will be always negative with their results. A well-balanced diet related to physical energy demand is a prerequisite. Yes. What are you eating yourself personally every single day during 1 week? And then we have to take blood samples twice a week, and of course 24-hour urine. And then we are able to see if you are in the unbalanced situation or well-balanced situation. A well-balanced diet related to physical energy is a prerequisite, as I said, under supervision of a nutritionist and a dietitian. But those who are knowing exercise, because we have in Belgium as well as in Great Britain, people who are nutritionists, of course, right, for healthy people, but they are not necessarily totally oriented to physical exercise, so they have to know that. Therefore, to end my presentation in the time almost, how to apply the yin and yang theory. Of course, the yin and the yang is a reasonable success between I'm for it, I'm against it. That's the yin and yang theory in Far East Asian countries, and I agree with that. So, keep your eyes open. One does not receive wisdom, we have to discover it ourselves. French philosophy. Second one, there won't be many of them, don't worry. Second one, Baruch Spinoza. Baruch Spinoza was a philosopher born in Portuguese. Then he was kicked off with his family because he was a Jew under the Queen of Spain, and she was a Catholic queen. Then they spring to the Netherlands, because the Netherlands were in those days Protestants. And Baruch Spinoza said, unfortunately, he died almost as a young person, he said, the strength of a conviction has no relation with its veracity. It is not because I said, that's the truth, try to demonstrate it. I don't believe you. Facts have to be presented. And then I'm able to get that you might be correct. Therefore, let us be reasonable, do still some exercise, and of course, I'm going to end my presentation with a charming book in Portuguese, in Brazilian in fact. 571 pages to get more information about most of the stuff that I have been giving to you today. So, eu agradeço pela sua atenção. Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll have 5 minutes for questions.
Don't hesitate. No, Roger. No. Well, we are extremely good friends anyway.
Questions? So?
Get back home happy or happier than before.
That's the question.
Okay.
Thanks so much again. Thank you, guys. I'd like to give you a certification from
No, that was
School of
here.
Education.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
You have pictures?
a nice certificate. Very good.
No pictures, okay. Another one
I have
for your collection.
I'm sorry, but I thought we were going to have questions.
Do you have questions?
To 300.
Well, 150 would be enough.
No, I don't want to extend things, but I did want one point. You started off talking about carnitine. And I know from studies we did, and I know from Geet and Cederblad in Stockholm, that the absorption is very low in the first place, and you don't get any changes in muscle carnitine. But some years later, we were thinking about this, that I was working with Kent Lead, and we wondered if in fact it is the coenzyme A pool which is more limiting to free fatty acid oxidation than in fact the carnitine transfer in mitochondria. Very, very little information is available on coenzyme A. We know that it's about 0.1 micromole in muscle compared to 23 millimoles for carnitine. So sorry, 0.1 millimole per carnitine for coenzyme A, 23 millimole per kilogram dry muscle. So there's a massive difference. You are really on the knife edge when you come to coenzyme A. Have you ever thought about looking at coenzyme A?
No, we haven't.
Because that's from pantothenic acid.
Yeah.
And we have probably a limitation on the amount of pantothenic
I think that could be an interesting point to look at. Also, but I still wonder where might be the limitation that we didn't found in the previous papers, even if we didn't look to this kind of specific reaction. If there was something important, and that part of the trip should be important, they would have much more positive results.
Last question.
Yeah.
5 things which will improve performance. What would you choose?
To increase up.
Belgian chocolate obviously is number 1.
Being still a young man. Being still a young man.
Yeah.
You said that's not enough, of course.
If you were looking for nutrients, nutritional interventions, what would be your 5 choices?
Well, I think that the vitamin might be important because they are cofactors of many enzymes. I think that having specific, let's say, information about the real quality of protein that I'm eating. Then, of course, not to add too much of glucose, because there might be a competition between glucose and these amino acids. What else? And of course, doing exercise regularly. I think they were 5. Maybe you have 5 others. Yes, he said yes.
And you would have Belgian chocolate.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in here, listening to us. Obrigado. Sweating.
O pessoal passou a lista já? Aí?
Está faltando gente.
Não, aqui acho que está todo mundo. Obrigado, gente.